But I don't think we should do that, because I think if you get too much into like those kinds of...
Want to start again? Somewhere that's less noisy?
I think that's fair. Let's go over here.
This is an exhibition that takes its name from a whole series of pseudonyms that Kierkegaard used during his as part of his writing practice. I actually think it's quite interesting to actually take a creative and somewhat irreverent approach to something that has such a heavy legacy, especially here in Copenhagen, as Kierkegaard. So we borrowed his pseudonyms, which I guess we're there to borrow, and we've used them as a way of attributing authorship within the context of the exhibition here in Fotografisk Center. And in the process of that reattribution of authorship, we have taken away the names of the original authors of the material presented here. I say authors in parentheses because some of the material is really just material. It's not really artwork. Some of it is just raw material, and some of it is quite processed material, and some of it is very, very processed material. And there's a way in which art and materiality are sort of not distinguished from one another here. They're very much kind of presented side by side and presented in a way that doesn't kind of draw out distinctions or differences or hierarchies. Participants range from current students in my department, in the time-based media department in the academy, to former students of the department who are still students in the academy but in other programs, to students who graduated from the program over the last 5 or 6 years. And then the final group of invitees are artists who've taught on the program, either as visiting lecturers or people who've been regular visitors. And the idea of bringing all these people together was firstly to assert the idea of not so much the idea of a community, because community seems to imply some sense of similitude, and also some sense of, some idea of the communal, and also some strange sense of exclusion, actually. But more what I was interested in was the idea of the school as an institutional structure within which artists and writers exchange ideas. So it's a place of exchange. The analogy that I've used in mediating the ideas for the show, I often talk about the idea of a marketplace. And there is a sense in which the space here has the sort of cacophonious kind of noisiness and kind of competitive kind of ness of like a stock market trading floor or of a bazaar. And that's a quality that we're interested in. You can imagine the vitrines as almost like stalls in a bazaar. And there's lots of voices here. Some of them agree, some of them disagree. They speak to one another, they speak across one another, and that's kind of the character of the space as we've assembled it. There's a significance in the difference between presenting, for example, photographic material or any type of material. There's a difference between presenting it horizontally on a wall, or vertically on a wall, I should say, and horizontally in a vitrine or on a table surface. And the fundamental difference for me is that when you present it on a wall, for the most part it functions in a pictorial way. When you present it on a table, it functions more in a kind of more materialist way, right? So when we see the photograph on a table, we understand it as a document. When we see it on the wall, we understand it more, we tend to read it in more pictorial terms. And so there's a very simple sort of strategy there, which is about presenting the work that artists do in material terms. And that's why we focused on the floor as a space to work as opposed to the walls.